We are back on Savile Row, and whilst tailoring is very much at the heart of British craftsmanship and heritage, there is also a deeper and more passionate side of craftsmanship that for me holds dear, and that is shoemaking. And so I'm here today at the first ever bespoke shoe shop that's opened up on Savile Row. It's at Gaziano Girling. So we are now inside the shop on Savile Row, and shoemaking for me is very much, I would say, a passion from a fan's point of view, but it's very much a different story for the two men who are seated to my right. These are the eponyms of Gaziano and Girling. They've got Dean Girling and Tony Gaziano. They're here with me today to hopefully open up everyone's eyes to the fine and skilled craft of shoemaking. The thing with shoes is that they are very much the sort of the most abused of luxury items. We buy a suit from Savile Row, we tend to hang it up and we tend to wear it. We don't, drag it along the floor as we wear it. We do have to do that with shoes. And so the making of a shoe is what I think is the very definition of luxury, that bridge between practicality and art. And I'm really delighted, gents, that you are here today with me. Before we talk about the intricate aspects of the creation of a bespoke shoe, could you tell me a little bit about you two teaming up and creating Gaziano and Girling as a brand?
So my father's a bespoke shoemaker before me, so I learned a little bit of skill from him. School, not intention to go into the shoe business, but sort of fell back into it as work dried up in the steel construction I was in at the time. So I then retrained myself, came to London, went to Cordwainers and got myself on a shoemaking course. After that, I became an apprentice with John Lobb in St James and flourished from there and became a freelance outdoor worker, so a shoemaker. That's where I met this gentleman here, who was working for another bespoke house in London. Tony then left London.
Yep.
Went back to Northampton to set a bespoke department up for Edward Green. I then made samples for him there, and we became closer and just talk about the product and this, that and the other. We wanted to build a ready-to-wear brand as well, but first and foremost, it was the bespoke product that we were creating. Yeah. and travelling the world, doing the trunk shows. But we always had, the passion and the plan to have a ready-to-wear shoe to bring to the marketplace. We had a very bespoke aesthetic to it. We were looking at the existing brands out there, and we thought they got a little bit dusty, a little bit stagnant and that. And we thought, well, we've got to outshine those guys and bring a shoe to the marketplace that, because we're new kids on the block. So, myself and Tony, very much hands-on in the making process, bespoke and ready to wear.
When you go back to how we kind of started off, I think that's one of a few things that actually that we've always shared. I mean, Dean have always had, to be fair, Dean's got a better eye for quality.
That's good of you to say. As a perfectionist, that's a very noble thing for you to admit to. Yeah.
I'm a perfectionist as well.
But I'm like, it all comes down to kind of natural character as well. I'm a creator, the design element in me. There is an element of me that once I've created something, I move on to create something else. You know what I mean?
So,
there's a lot of things we could, proportions and this whole aesthetic of that shoe. If the cap's too long, too short, it throws it all out.
So, with that in mind, for people who are watching who aren't necessarily introduced to the brand, could you please articulate a little bit more what the Gaziano and Girling aesthetic design look is? Like, what is it that it distinguishes itself?
I'd say it's a reinterpretation of British classic shoes. With kind of like a continental twist in it, So the styles themselves, within the people that know, can tell that the shapes are a little bit more dynamic. the proportions of the styles, every area is paid attention to, and it is the complete product. And the reason why that is because from last to boxing the shoe, me and Dean know how to do every single process as owners, and therefore we aggressively implement that within the business.
And crucially, you know when it goes wrong.
Yeah, and we know when it goes wrong.
It's rare for business owners because they you may own a Savile Row brand, but you won't necessarily know whether a jacket.
Yeah, most business owners or even kind of high level management are more corporate experience. You know, that's their thing. You know, and so you know, I think because of that, we create the complete package. Yeah. You know, last shape, quality, finish. You know, and you know, whereas you know, in my mind, I think maybe some other kind of it falls short somewhere, if you know what I mean. Whereas I think we're all encompassing kind of you know, perfected our product. You know, so I've never really kind of spoke about this before, but I don't know. But when we first set up, I had this huge passion to be able to want to perfect every style of its style. So the nicest looking tassel loafer, the nicest looking Oxford, and and that's kind of where we really started. We started off with really very, very classical shoes.
Yeah,
just wanted to make them look nicer than what was on the market, if you know what I mean.
And a lot of that comes from the last shape. You can transform a very classic cap toe Oxford, put it on a nice, elegant deco last, and it transform it into a more contemporary looking, sharper shoe.
Yes.
For the young executive or whatever. But you know, you may get the elder gentleman who oh no, it's too sharp for me, it's too out there. I need a much more conservative, round, bulbous toe. You know, but we cater for all that kind of.
I mean, if people really look into the range, there's something for everybody here.
That's right.
We probably won't archive any styles. We're just going to build a bigger variation for people to choose from. You know, there's 150 samples in this room of different styles of shoe. There's 60 different leathers, you know, in these swatches with suedes, grains, alligators, all kind of things. I think one of our past employees calculated that there's millions and millions of different options of shoe that you can get from our made to order system, let alone our bespoke. Our bespoke is even more vast, you know. So, you know, it's about choice and execution of design and quality.
So, as part of your offering to clients, you have slightly stepped outside the traditional kind of limitations of, you know, made to order and ready to wear, and then also bespoke. You've managed to find a middle road, which is really interesting. So you have here, it's called the Optimum. I mean, so when did this come out as a service?
This came out where
COVID.
The pandemic, COVID.
Yeah. So because the idea is ultimately if people's feet worked well enough for the lasts, and people were happy with that, they could have bespoke handmade shoes with a hand welt, you know, with the bespoke designers working on the shoes by hand, but then just not with somebody's own personal. Yeah,
100% handmade shoe, but on a ready-to-wear last. Rather than say if they're a 9E, they would choose a 9E, whether it be T73, T70, or deco shaped last, but it's made in exactly the same way as a bespoke shoe, but without a custom last.
So the details that you would find in bespoke, like the pitched and flushed heel, that you can't actually get from your Goodyear ready-to-wear shoes. It's just too difficult to do on a factory-made shoe. So these are the, you know, you getting your shoemakers to kind of add these small details.
That's the sort of ultimate ready-to-wear handmade shoe, basically, on a symmetrical 9E last.
And I have to say, like when you look at it, you really can see the kind of the dimensions, the angles, the smaller details, that it is just that level above.
Absolutely.
Because you know, don't get me wrong, your factory-made shoes are by far the best on the market. You know, they really are quite something, and you have done what you sort of set out to do, which is refine the traditional British shoe and elevate it. But at the same time, you know, it still doesn't compare, I think, when you kind of allow for things like bespoke and
No,
now
that's
the
just
softer.
another level above that.
Yeah.
We always say that when you're paying this amount of money for a pair of shoes, it needs to be good enough that you don't want to ruin it by wearing it.
Yes, yeah.
It's there needs to be that about it. So it's a great service for those that want the artistic and the craftsmanship perfection. But don't necessarily need a last waiting for them, or haven't got the patience to go through the full bespoke process.
Yes, because these are, 4 months more or less for weight rather
Yeah.
than bespoke, which can be over a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that being said, you and I have spoken, and you have told me very encouragingly that bespoke is on the up.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's
Great. I think we're super busy with bespoke. It's probably busier than it's been in the last.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a huge demand for it these days.
Yeah. The thing is, bespoke shoemaking and probably tailoring is so small compared to the consumer population, if you know what I mean. There's always going to be new people walking through the door.
Yeah.
And, this type of business creates a lot of curiosity.
Yeah.
You could get guys that come in and only have ever had one pair, they just want to go through the experience of it.
Yeah.
But then you get guys that can't wear regular shoes, or they can't wear loafers because of the shape of their foot.
Yeah.
And then you get guys that just want the best.
So what we have here is a black cattail Oxford, as you were saying, the popular style. And the process of getting to here starts from,
a pile of leather, basically.
A pile of leather.
Customer makes an appointment to kind of come and see us. We take a comprehensive measure of all the different angles of his foot, various measurements throughout the feet, and even kind of profile gauges, which tell me all the depth issues. And you can even see here that this is the outline of the side profile of the foot.
Oh, right, yeah.
So at this stage, typically, we say to the customer, look, we just need to know what type of shoe that you want, whether you want like an Oxford or a loafer or a boot. And then you can choose the finer details later on, because the most important thing at this stage is the shape and the fit.
So do you have a recommendation for people when they if a client goes in for their first bespoke, do you suggest a style as a kind of first go bespoke style?
In an ideal situation, yes. But if that customer, maybe a Captain Oxford or some form of Oxford, lace-up shoe.
Is that because it kind of covers all bases, both from a construction point of view, but also the foot, and it's also a laced shoe? So
it's also a shoe that you're probably going to wear. I mean, for me personally, the most important thing is that make a choice of shoe that you're going to wear on a semi-regular basis, because that's the way we have to gauge the fit with the first pair.
Fine.
That's a progressive thing. From that first pair, you may say, well, I've worn these lots of times now, they've broken in quite nicely, but they've become a little bit roomy there or there, and I didn't expect that. So next time, can we tweak it a little bit closer to allow for that?
Got it.
And that's a great shoe to start with. I mean, obviously, casual shoes, slip-on, are much more challenging to fit the foot, because you've got no lace control or anything. It's important, heel grip to hold your foot back in the heel cup and everything else. There's less kind of room for error, should we say.
Okay.
And allowing for different materials as well. Obviously, we use the finest calf suede money can buy.
Yeah.
So they're very forgiving and soft, and will give that much more on the foot than, for say, a black calf. Black calf is always one of the firmest leathers in the swatches.
Yeah.
Just for the nature of black calf over browns and tans. That's probably more forgiving on the foot. Different materials vary dramatically, on the foot. And people's feet expand, contract, long haul flights. Yes. So you can stretch a pair. You've got a long haul flight for 12 hours. Your feet may increase by like 10 millimeters.
Really?
So you'll stretch that shoe. Mine certainly do.
You start getting uncomfortable.
So
when the measurements are made, then from that is the lasting the next
Yeah, so we
Create the
start off
last.
with what's called a rough turn, which is basically an extremely generous foot.
Okay.
Or last, if you know what I mean, and then it's kind of carved down all to the shapes of the measurement.
Yeah.
And the last, for you guys that don't know, is the mould of the foot which the shoe's made around on. So very similar to the shoe tree.
Yeah, similar to a shoe tree.
But it's
Starts off a block of wood, square wood, and then it's turned, like Tony said, a rough turn. Then it's finally sculptured into those measurements.
Yeah. And this is
and
where
then the fitting will be
you
made.
were talking about an eye, having the eye for things. The lasting is crucial for that, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because you need to, it's not, you're not making a sculpture of a foot.
No,
You're
and
making
aesthetically, you've got to get
Yeah.
the toe shapes right, so they do represent a pair of shoes
Yeah.
to satisfy that customer. Although, I haven't come across a customer yet that's got a pair of feet.
yeah. I think you could
Aesthetically.
you could say that the two most important things is one is fit, and the other one is to enhance the foot.
So, okay,
So we make a last.
Yes.
Maybe not this is a tree, but similar.
To all the dimensions of the measure, and then I do like a rough design basically and a pattern to fit on the last, purely to take it to this stage. So this is probably the first thing that the customer will see as a as his project, and this is like a trial shoe using second grade leather. We've put a thin layer of cork and a cork heel on, and what we do is we slip this on the foot. We look at any areas of pressure, and then if necessary we cut the shoes open like this so we can have a look inside the shoe to see actually what the foot's doing inside the shoe. So for this one, for example, I've opened a window here and it showed me that I need to give him more arch support because there's a gap between his foot and the insole.
I see.
So, and then we go back to the drawing board, cut the proper pattern with all the proportions and all the details on it.
And that's a paper pattern just like you'd find in Savile Row.
Yeah, that's just a paper pattern. Yeah.
Which is
so
2D, then that is used to click the leather.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, like these are the cut pieces. Once the pattern's done, this is probably the most simple style of shoe. But we select a certain area of the leather. Typically for bespoke, you have a skin with a backbone down the middle, and we use the butt only because that's the best part of the skin to cut a pair of bespoke, and then we use the rest of the skin to make things like the fitting shoes because we consider the leather not good enough to make for a new pair of bespoke shoes, if you know what I mean. So it's used for different areas of we might use it. We might use it for some linings. We might use it for whatever. Once that's done, we give it to one of the girls in our factory.
So we call a closed upper. Gone from that stage to that stage, different style, of course.
Yeah.
And this is a typical cat toe Oxford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
which has then been closed,
forgive me,
stitched all together.
The lining on the inside is that purely the lining of the shoe, or is that?
That is the lining of the shoe. That's the calf lining of the shoe. Yeah.
Okay. And
so between the lining and the upper, so the outside is called the upper.
Yeah.
This part, you will have stiffeners. So you have a leather toe puff in there.
Okay.
You'll have a side lining support through here. Then going to the back of the shoe, you'll have what we call a stiffener, a counter stiffener.
So this is still yet to have all that.
Yes. So
and that goes in between the lining and the.
Those components are made out of this leather here, which is English oak bark. So that's a toe puff. So that goes in between. This is obviously in its raw state. This has got to be mulled up in water. When it's in a mulled state,
it's tough, isn't it? I mean, really,
this is stiff piece of leather.
Surprised when you get water in it though. And it's at that right mould state, you could literally kind of mould it with your hands, couldn't
so
you?
we'll soak this in water for a minimum of a couple of 3 hours, longer.
Oh gosh, a really long
so
time.
It penetrates right through the full thickness of the leather. That will then be skived down to, say, 3mm, 2.5mm.
Yeah.
So that goes in between there, acts as a stiffener for your toe puff. That guy there which is called a counter, goes in the back of the shoe. It'll be skived into shape.
Skiving is
yeah, when it's all wet, we will have a blade which we will skive all the edges to make them thin, so they don't profile. It's a little bit like the uppers.
Of it, yeah.
The upper's been done there, so it's wafer thin on the edge, so it doesn't profile.
Where the leather's chamfered down to nothing.
So you say so it keeps
Because
its shape.
if it's not thin, you know, you get a bump here, it'll profile.
Yeah, it's there to create a seamless layer, if you know what I mean.
And to give the shoe structure. So you've got this structure in the shoe, and again on the toe part.
And how long does that process take to kind of get to that point where, I mean, we're talking about several days worth of work to get it to the shape of having the upper ready.
Yeah, so actually from initially taking the draft to doing the pattern, to cutting the leather, closing the leather, and then the making process of the shoe starts. From that stage to that stage, maybe 20 hours.
Yeah. Because would you say there's more hours on the sole or the hand welting, or on the upper?
Their soles.
The soles and heels, yeah. Constructing the shoe is where the majority of the labour is involved. But obviously, before that process, there's labour involved with crafting the last, doing the pattern, cutting the upper, putting the upper together, and then from that stage, you know, this is then again in a mellow state, drafted over the last with pincers, you know, all done by hand. You know, this literally be sitting here in a chair, and this would all be lasted over.
And tacked in with lots and lots of nails.
I mean, on this last, you would have an insole. So the insole starts again with a raw piece of leather like this, which has been soaked in water, and then blocked onto the last.
Blocked, is that by?
So it's shaped. It'll be nailed onto the last.
Yes. And
again, left to dry.
Yeah.
Naturally dry. You can't force dry it because it causes problems.
And once that happens, will that then keep shape, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's formed then the profile of that last. Like Tony was saying earlier, you know, if you sculpture that here to give the customer more arch support, that will then take the contours of that last, because in the wet, mellow state, which is this guy here pretty much. So this one has been taken off. So this is the insole that's been blocked to a last, and now it's had the rib cut and shaped in, and this has had its holes pricked for the welt. So this is all wrapped over here. This all comes up.
Is this a welt?
That's a welt. So again, starts in its flat form, again soaked in water.
And can you explain what the function of the welt is? Because it's probably the most talked about aspect of
That's the most
shoe.
important. I mean, that's the main structure of the shoe, to hold the sole on. So this is the welt that's been sewn into the upper through the insole by hand, and then your sole is stitched on through the welt.
Yes. Okay.
That holds your sole on.
This is the reason why it can be resoled multiple times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas opposed to Blake stitch, which has no welt and is just stitched straight through the insole, you can't properly repair them, can you?
No, I mean, I've got a pair of bespoke shoes that are 15, 16 years old.
Okay.
Still in the first set of soles.
Well, you've probably still got your father's shoes, which
so,
are...
Yes. I mean, there's some of the 40, 50, 45 years old.
Yeah, and over a period of that time, things do start to deteriorate. Obviously, the sole's wearing out. This has got a little bit dry and brittle, so it has to come off and be replaced.
Yes.
To put that shoe back to the state it was when it was first made.
Bespoke shoes could easily last you a lifetime, but there is a responsibility to you to know how to look after them during the wear of them.
Yeah. So on the welt, just so I can understand the process. So you have this. It's made supple. It is attached to the upper first, or the sole first.
To the upper.
To the upper.
So the welt
And
is
the
sewn
insole.
into.
Sorry, the insole. The insole.
Yeah.
So,
So this is the insole.
Yeah.
The upper comes up around the last to this point.
Yes.
Then the welt is sewn in through there, through this wall. You see this wall that's been created?
Yeah.
We call the rib. So the welt is sewn through here.
Yes.
which you can see. You can't see 'cause it's all been corked. So
Yeah.
the stitches come through here. This is just the basic form of welt. That's in the soap. This is then split down in half, skived to the edge to create that strip round that follows round the shoe. So that is your foundation to stitch your sole to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is essentially a pair of welts.
Yeah, that's a pair of
Yeah.
welts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can see the width. I mean, obviously it's been split down
I see.
in
Okay.
half.
And one
So-
of the aspects as well that people might have seen on shoes but not really understood it, because it does have a decorative aspect to it, but it's called fudging,
Yeah.
which is this sort of ribbed decoration along the edge of the sole. But that actually has a practical application, doesn't it? 'Cause
Yeah, that
it's-
determines the length of the stitch.
Yes.
So commonly most bespoke shoes are sort of 10 to the inch. Some go fine if it's like a dress pump
Yeah.
or something like, you can go down to 12, 14 to the inch.
And do you use that for attaching the
A lighter weight.
the upper to the sole to the shoe, or the
The sole to the welt.
The sole to the welt.
The sole to
Yeah.
the
welt.
So this is the sole, obviously. This then gets, again, submerged into water. So it's a nice mellow state. Split down to determine the weight of the sole. Normally it's a quarter of an inch. So this guy then gets bonded onto here, and then a channel is opened up around the sole, and then it's stitched on through there. So
Okay.
the channel folded back in a wet, mellow state, stitched on with an awl and hemp made up thread. That's the thin one that's probably for,
This is actually for an upper, I think, isn't it?
normally typically sort of, 5 cord hemp
yes.
soles weight for stitching a sole on. And then when that's still in its mellow state, the channel's all laid down, covering, protecting the sole stitch, and then obviously ends up like this. So you can't see the sole stitch, but they're there, like you say, the fudging there.
Is that invisible channel stitching? Is that
Yeah.
what you call it? Yeah.
And this is, obviously the bevel waist is completely blind.
And I believe this is a...
That's an
this
edge
is a-
iron.
That's an edge iron.
That's an
isn't
edge
it?
iron, which
Yeah.
would be,
So you use that for...
once you've rasped, glassed,
Yes.
sanded.
Sorry, let's go back.
Let's go back.
Take me through rasp, glassing, and take me through that.
Yeah, okay.
I want
So-
to know, just because I'm going to be a shoemaker one day. I just,
You should be.
I know.
You
I
should
just-
be, Tom.
Deep down, mate.
Your waist as a
Wait, see,
journalist.
exactly. My mother tells me all the time.
Yeah, let's go back then. So the sole has then been attached on. From there, there's obviously a heel's got to be built. So we come to the heel lifts. So individual heel lifts.
Is there a
One, two,
generic heel size that you go with, or is
Again,
it also based on the size of the client? Like, are there
Some
more
client-
layers if they're taller or if they're shorter? Like, what's the...
Yeah, so obviously some gentlemen who maybe on the shorter side say, "Oh, can you give me a bit of a lift?" So
Sure.
I want a inch and a quarter, inch and a half heel, But typically a heel will be anything from 1 inch to 1 1/8 inches.
But
Which
that's
this is,
more to do with customer specification than it is
You
to
don't-
do
you don't
with...
have like a generic set.
you have to balance a shoe. There have to be some toe springs, so that shoe has to balance correctly.
Yeah.
So that all depends on the toe spring on the last. But typically a heel height would be about 1 inch to 1 1/8 inches.
Okay.
Individually built up, lift by lift, and then it's all shaped
By hand.
by hand.
Yeah.
By hand, it'll be rasped by hand, then it'll be glassed by
Rasping
hand.
is...
Rasping, a hand pricked rasp. Have you seen one?
Like a file.
File. So a rasping,
yeah.
like
Oh yes,
filing
of
wood.
course. And you use them on the rasp for lasting as well, don't you?
Yeah, similar, but they're a bit
shaped
more coarser. But this is more of a
Yes.
finer
Yeah, okay.
hand pricked last file. So
So by
you
that point, it's quite the heel looks quite rough. It's,
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
you've trimmed it with a knife, so it's all been hand cut. There's all hand tools. There's no machinery. There's no grinding machinery involved at all.
Yeah.
It's all done by hand. So it's typically been shaped with a knife, beat with a hammer to get some shape, and then finally you will rasp it to get your final shape of the heel. Same with the forepart of the sole, and then you'll glass it with a piece of glass.
So, okay.
Everything's worked wet as well, just to make it easier to carve with a knife.
So it's all in
That's
another
it.
state.
Yeah.
But, okay, so I've seen the using a bit of glass. I thought it was someone trying to be sort of eccentric. But it is actually
No.
glass is...
It's still the traditional way to finish a bespoke shoe.
Yeah.
So forgive me,
no-
but what, do you just sort of walk outside with the paint, drop
No,
it, and sort of
typically,
that's
you know,
pick other bits? But how does
Typically,
that
a
work?
painting falls off the wall and the glass shatters. We pick it up and we take it to our shed.
Yeah.
So thank God the window's broken. Everyone else is annoyed when the window's
We get-
broken.
we
I
send-
feel
we
like
s-
this is marvellous.
we send
have
this-
tools all over the floor.
We send the children out with their catapults to break people's window.
The kids
I'll
in
clear that up
Kettering-
for you, sir.
The kids in Kettering are
Yeah.
sort of like the police are now
Yeah.
wise to you.
Yeah.
The gas
That's where all their glass is going.
You tend to prefer kind of like picture glass. don't
Yeah,
you?
because
Things
it's
like that.
thinner.
Yeah.
And you get a glass cut and just break it off. It's got to be broken at a certain angle
Yeah.
to create that sharp edge in order to glass
Yeah.
Efficiently.
It's used on this leather as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and you scrape, and also the sole will all be scraped with the glass as well.
Yeah.
To take the surface off
Okay.
the leather, and then once you're happy with the line of your sole, which is following the last and give you a nice shape there, equal, distance away from the upper, typically just showing a stitch like this guy, so it's giving it a nice, elegant shape. And then once you're happy with all that, and you think, oh yeah, my heel's now come into shape, it's nice and close to the upper, it's got a great shape there, a little bit of pitch, you would then ink that with a water-based ink. This one typically, obviously, it's navy shoes, so it would be black. And then you would have an iron like this, which will be warmed on a little gas light, give it some heat, to then run round the shoe to lay those fibres down and start to create a glaze on that shoe. So from that, you get a certain amount of glaze from just the ink, from the warmth, and that will and then you will add some wax to that, and then you would then iron it again until you get this, mirror sort of glaze on the edge of the shoe. Shoes are completely handmade. The only machine involved in the making process is the one that will do the fine stitching on the upper. Yeah. And that's it.
It's worth mentioning that even this is quite an interesting thing, that the threads that you hand stitch with actually have to be handmade as well.
Yeah, so that's made from hemp. You pull off strands, and like I say, typical weight for stitching soles on.
And is there a resin that kind of holds it all together?
Yeah,
wax,
you'd wax it, you'd beeswax it, and then have
friction movement with it to melt the wax, and it binds into
twist it so it's nice and strong. This is
Pretty,
you're not going to break it.
And then you kind of bind it onto.
You can't rip it.
Well, people tend to use
use
two or
£2.50.
three things like that's actually a bit of fishing wire, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a bit of nylon wire.
But we
So it
also
just
use
gives you a
boar's
bit of
bristles as well.
Traditionally it would be a
Boar's
boar's.
bristle, that's amazing.
Yeah. So
Because it needs to be stiff, thin, and flexible
It's
in
got to be
order to get
tapered
through
so
the
it
different
goes through the hole.
substances.
So
you couldn't use a steel.
And it's when you have a sort of
this is typically, as you see, it comes through here.
Okay,
Yeah.
So it typically goes through.
yeah.
And remember, when it's
then-
going through there, it's also going through about 4 layers of other leather as well.
Because you've got all this
and
to go
other
through.
things will go in at the same time because you put in two of them.
Yeah, and then lock it off
Yes.
and pull it tight, so it holds that welt firmly in place.
Which is called a lock stitch.
Yeah.
Because it kind of basically created so that if one stitch comes undone, it doesn't all ravel. It locks, so.
You said earlier that there were things that people do that are sort of ill-advised when it comes to kind of, not looking after their shoes properly.
Yes.
Could I ask you what your kind of major bugbears, your major frustrations, people who love shoes, what it is that people do too often that limit the lifespan of their shoes?
Not use shoehorn.
Not
That is a big
shoehorn
bugbear
is a
for
big
me
one.
because people come back with their heels crashed in. Shoe trees as well.
Yeah, the important thing after wearing the shoes, especially in poor conditions like wet conditions, is to put the shoe trees in straight away and lay the shoes on the side like that to dry out naturally. Never force dry a shoe, let it dry out naturally, don't put it near a radiator or airing cupboard anything like that, just dry it naturally.
You can have a situation where mould grows on the sole.
Yeah.
If you put down your shoes,
Yeah,
if
don't
you're
put
out
them
in the
down
rain,
out that
put
way.
them down flat.
Yeah.
You can
Leave
lift
it-
it up
yeah.
and there's mould underneath.
Yeah. Always lay them on their side like that.
I've heard that the thing with the shoe trees is that it's a bit gross, but your feet sweat during the day, or they release sort of moisture.
Everybody's
and the
feet.
idea is that heats up the leather and makes it sort of more malleable.
Yep.
So what you want to do is get the shoe trees in, and so the shoe cools down effectively.
Yeah, it absorbs any perspiration,
Yeah.
what's in the leather, and let it all dry naturally. Yeah.
That means it holds its shape.
Yeah, and it keeps
It's
that
also
shoe. It's
fairly important for the actual shoe to absorb some of that moisture as well, because then the shoe creates what's called a footbed.
Yeah.
So that in the insole, if you look on the insole of any, say, Goodyear welted shoe that's got a good insole, you will actually see that insole's taken the shape of the person's foot.
Yes, I mean, when I put my hands in my shoes the other day to kind of try and fix that divot that's in the toe cap, and I can feel my sort of toes sort of on the sole, sort of-
This is the insole, obviously very absorbent piece of leather, so the perspiration from your feet getting absorbed in this makes it in a mellow state, and then it will take the contours of your foot.
Not entirely dissimilar to the whole process of putting it in water in the first place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
But it's one of the reasons as well why when somebody has a new shoe, it's important to wear it at least a dozen times before they have it stretched or altered or anything like that, because you're actually giving the shoe the chance to work with the foot.
Yeah.
You know, but once you're obviously that insole's compressed and you take and it takes the foot mold, it's actually adding extra room on the upper. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
completely.
So you're compressing that leather down. Obviously, most men weigh 15 stone, don't they? 16 stone?
Something like that.
Something like that. So you can appreciate that is sort of bedding that insole down with that body weight on it and the perspiration and warmth of your foot. So it then starts to give that insole some sort of shape.
Excellent. And obviously you had very illustrious careers. It's been, when did you open the shop here? It was 2000.
10 years.
We moved here 2013, didn't we?
Yeah. No, we got the
2014.
lease, but we didn't move until 2014. So it's 10 years this year.
10-year
10-year anniversary this year.
We
Off
moved.
Savile Row.
We
Of
moved from
being at
number
Savile
12.
Row, yeah.
So we were from 2006. We were at number 12. Small basement, display at Chilborough
I
Morgan.
remember, which
Yeah.
Any
then-
highlights?
Obviously the highlight is all to do with then Prince Charles and now the King. You know, we've had the pleasure of making him 4 or 5 pairs of shoes, and we actually made the pair of shoes for the King's coronation. So I think that's been the pinnacle.
That's the pinnacle, ultimate sort of goal.
Yeah.
We're honoured to make His Majesty's shoes. And I suppose that's the pinnacle, really, of G&G.
Amazing, and what
Thank
a great!
you.
And I was delighted to see not only that he came to visit the factory in his capacity then as Prince of Wales, but and
Yes.
his support as a supporter
Yeah,
of
he's-
craftsmanship. But then he clearly, obviously, has an eye for aesthetics and
He
fell in
does.
love with the brand, and he's taken you up on what it is that you do here, and that's a wonderful.
He's very
Yeah, he's a
supportive of
great
all crafts
supporter,
and traditions.
We've known each other now for a decade because I've been at the Rake for a decade, and it was one of the first events I came to was an event here.
Right, okay.
And I on many occasions spoken about the fact that I fell in love with shoes when I used to open my father's cupboards, and he was a wonderful collector of shoes, and so they've always held a sort of a mystique and an elegance that surpassed all other things that one could acquire for their wardrobes. And so coming in here and seeing that there was a brand that was really paying attention to the optical illusion that shoes can provide to huge feet such as mine has been a great pleasure, and getting to know you along that has been a real joy. And
thank you. It's been lovely to see you today. And,
Likewise.
It's a real pleasure.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
And yes, Gaziano Girling, Savile Row. So before we go, I'm ensconced here on the throne of Gaziano and Girling, and what this particular seat is all about is polishing shoes. Shoe maintenance is as critical as the craftsmanship that get the shoe from leather and sole to a finished product. When you buy a pair of shoes, of course the usage of them destroys them. So you take them outside, you walk on them, you are out in the elements, you bump into people for all sorts of reasons, shoes get scuffed and they need protecting. And I would say one of the great sins of people who have shoes these days is they do not know how to properly maintain and look after their shoes. There are two things that are important about this. Is firstly, there's an aesthetic purpose behind it. Shoes look amazing when they're well polished, and secondly, it protects them. So I'm here with Steve, who I would say is the great expert in the UK for shoe polishing. I would say I'm fairly adept at polishing my own shoes, but everything I know about shoe polishing I learned from Steve. In the same way that people need to sort of launder and press their suits, the application of things like polish and moisturiser to leather is a really essential part of maintaining it. So can you talk to us about the kind of, both the products that you will use, but also what it does to leather that makes it so important?
You need, if you're going to spend a lot of money on shoes, good quality shoes, you need to take care of them. So I use the best products, creams, waxes, from the best companies. So I don't, I'm not loyal to any one company, I just like to use the best products. The products that are going to be the best for longevity of the leather. So I use Sapphire waxes, a company called Boot Black, who are a Japanese company, will help to nourish the leather. I think you need to nourish your shoes. That's the most important thing, to keep them moisturised. Waxing I see as being more the makeup. It does protect the leather, but a lot of it is aesthetic, whereas the creams are the main thing that keeps your shoes alive.
So when you talk about wax, is what you mean is what people refer to as shoe polish, right?
Shoe polish,
yeah. Okay, so so the moisturiser for you is the most important part of the process.
I think so.
Okay.
Because it brings them alive as well.
Yeah.
You know, you've seen examples of my work where you have a shoe which literally is dead. I've had many examples of shoes that clients are waiting to throw in the bin.
Yeah.
And cream alone just brings them back to life.
Yeah.
Because you have different coloured creams as well, so you can add depth and texture.
Yeah.
Patina to the shoes, literally with cream.
Just, whilst I of course want everybody to come here, this is something that people watch across the world, they may not be able to.
Yeah.
But could you just sort of give an indication? I don't think people necessarily have the confidence to know what to do with moisturiser even if they bought it. So what's the application of cream and moisturiser to the shoe? Is it the same as a polish? How would you recommend?
I think you watch a lot of YouTube videos where they're trying to sell their products. Ignore it. Right, put small amounts and spread it evenly. If you oversaturate the leather, you can actually damage the leather. To be honest, I've seen a lot of examples where the leather's too oily, and you literally can't remove it from the leather once it's in there. So I use my fingers because it penetrates the leather properly. So you're pushing it into the leather. So with brushes, sometimes with cloths, you're literally just touching the top of the leather. You might make it look good, but you need to penetrate the leather to keep the longevity of the leather, so it seeps into the pores. So that's why I use my hands. I find that the best way to apply products, to be honest. For clients, I'd say if you're scared to use your hands, you're going to get messy. You're going to an event in the evening and you don't want to mess up your hands and you're just doing it quickly. I personally would advise using a cloth over a brush, and then use the cloth to rub in the product. I would find that the alternative way to using your hand.
Okay.
I would say.
And you hear people sort of saying you can use it in sort of cotton t-shirts and things. Even then, you don't necessarily need.
Yeah, I'll give an example.
in a minute of how to apply
Different
the cloth
cloths,
and how you do sort of a mirror shine with little bits of water
Yeah.
and wax and
Super.
combined, because I know a lot of people do struggle with that aspect. I know a lot of clients have contacted me and they say they don't know how to do it, etc., etc.
What are the telltale signs of certain issues that you've come across? You were talking earlier about you people come in and they've oversaturated or whatever. What are the signs that the shoes need looking after other than just scuffs?
There's a lot of examples. So shoes will come in and be matted, like they won't. It will look like they're full of like product.
Yeah.
And no matter what the client does, they can't get them to shine.
Do you mean like the patches, when there's like patches of...
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah, and also sort of you get clients come in more with sort of scratches on the leather, etc., and where we can sand it down, refill it, and then polish it afterwards. So I'd say to clients, no matter what the issue, there's pretty much always something you can do to fix the leather.
So what exactly are you doing now?
So at the moment, I'm mainly working around the side of your sole and just trying to get all the colour back into it, because you lost a lot of colour. On the tops, I've already nourished them, added a little bit of colour in there, a little bit of mahogany, just to try and bring them alive a little bit more. I'm going to start putting on the base coats in a second on your shoes, where we'll be building up a nice base to allow us to then mirror shine the shoes.
Okay. When people have things like polish at home,
Yeah.
do you recommend that they put polish across the entire shoe, just the toe cap? What's the rules?
I would say you work on the whole shoe, but then once you get to the mirror shining stage, you concentrate on the toes and the heels. You don't want the areas that flex to have the same amount of wax as the toes and the heels, which are solid areas, because once you bend your foot, that area will crack.
Yeah.
So I would advise to do creaming, base waxes over the whole shoe, like what I'm doing now, but build up on the toes and the heels with the mirror shine, so you don't end up with it cracking.
So what's this product?
So this is Savile Pat Deluxe, and that is a thicker wax than the one you would use to do the mirror shining.
Okay. So that acts as a base.
It does act as a base layer, yeah. So as you can see, I'm just building up layers now, small circles, rubbing the product into the leather.
Yeah.
Which is nourishing the leather at the same time as making it look good.
And what's your rule of thumb in terms of sort of numbers of layers, like the amount of times you go over the shoe before you then move on to the next stage?
I put on lots of small layers. So I build up lots and lots of small layers. I'm literally just touching the wax.
Yes.
So I'm not digging into the wax.
So that's another thing as well. People often, like when they have a cloth, they think to kind of make lots of big strokes, get lots of
and this is the problem.
Polish and put on, and then yeah.
Exactly. So people get carried away. They dig into it. They slap it on.
Yeah.
You touch it and apply.
So what's the difference between what you were just using to this next phase and what it is that you're using now?
I like to think that I know how to combine colours quite well. So what I'm doing, I've added all the sort of light brown, and now I'm just adding a bit of red in just to bring it to life and make it pop.
Yeah.
To add a bit of character. So literally just place the cloth there, pull it down, twist, quite a few times for me, wrap and then tuck under. just like that.
Okay.
Would you recommend using warm water or?
Room temperature water. A lot of the heat is in the preparation process when I apply the base layers. So my hands are hot.
Yeah.
So my hands are opening up the pores of the leather and allowing the products to penetrate in. I think we made the right decision going with a little bit of red in there.
Yeah,
'Cause it just gave it a bit of a kick.